right, so we're in Journal 17 here. And in this problem for our bell work, all it's asking you is to find the exact value for the trig function. So if you're given a trig function and you're given the angle, in this case it's in radians because there are pi's here. And if you want to know the exact trig function, well, that's when you probably want to use the unit circle here, because these are angles you can find on the unit circle. So 7 pi 6, where is 7 pi 6? Ah, right there. So here's the coordinate I get to use. So let me go highlight that so that way we can see it together. So we are using 7 pi over 6, and it looks like our x value is negative square root of 3 over 2, and our y value is negative 1/2. Keep in mind, when we're talking about sine, we are looking at the y. When we're looking at cosine, we are looking at x, and I guess tangent, can't fit that here. Tangent would be y over x. Okay, so in this case here, we want sine of 7 pi over 6. So sine is connected to y, and the y here is negative 1/2. So looks like sine 7 pi over 6 is negative 1/2. Cosine 7 pi over 6 is the square root of 3 over 2 negative. And then we have a cosecant. Now cosecant is related to sine, right? It's the reciprocal for sine. Let me write that over again. That looks kind of weird. So cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So that just means I'm going to take sine's value. So here was sine's value. And if it's the reciprocal, I would just flip it. So if I were to flip it, that's going to be negative 2 over 1. But negative 2 over 1 is just negative 2. And so it looks like my answer here is negative 2. So these are my values for each trig functions. But I also like to mention, so the reason why I brought up this problem is I want to take a closer look at reciprocals. So we know that sine is related to y and cosine is related to x, and tangent's the ratio of y over x. But when we're talking about reciprocals, we are, another way we can write cosecant is, so cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, or 1 over sine. Now let's just think about it for a moment. So I want to prove if this statement is true or not. So I'll put quotations around it. So I'm going to try it out. So just before I was working on that problem, cosecant is 7 pi over 6. So let me use this formula for a moment. So if it's 1 over sine, that would be sine 7 pi over 6, because that's the angle I'm working with. So I'm using this formula. So instead of writing cosecant, I'm putting it 1 over sine pi over 6. I'm going to see if working this out would give me the same answers I got here when I took the reciprocal of it. So I'm going to prove if this is true. So if I were to answer what sine 7 pi over 6, well, that's negative 1/2, just this value that we got from before. But 1 over negative 1/2, this is division. What's 1 divided by a fraction? Well, you got to flip this fraction so you can multiply by the reciprocal. And so that would mean 1 times negative 2 over 1. So you would put this over 1 and multiply straight across. So 1 times negative 2 gives me negative 2 over 1 times 1 gives you 1. And negative 2 over 1 is negative 2. All right, so it does look like I got the same answer as I did before. Now you're probably thinking, like, why would I go through all of this hassle if I know that the reciprocal of cosecant is sine, and reciprocal just means flip the fraction, right? Flipping the fraction was a lot quicker to do. So the reason why I'm showing you that the reciprocal just means 1 over that value, in this case 1 over sine, is because sometimes you are going to have trig functions that cannot use the unit circle. And so sometimes you have to rely on the calculator to find reciprocal trigs. So here's what happened. When you were finding cosecant 7 pi over 6 and you wrote it as 1 over sine 7 pi over 6, well, this, because it's in the bottom and we got the value, when we had this fraction in the bottom, we actually flipped it, right? Because you have to multiply by the reciprocal. Well, that's what causes you to get the same answer. So we're going to take a closer look at these types of formulas in the next slide. All right, so like I said before, sine is related to y, cosine is related to x, tangent is related to y over x. Cosecant, any type of reciprocal, can be 1 over the trig function that is reciprocal to. So because the reason why is because when you take that sine, it's in the denominator and you get that fraction, because it's in the denominator, you have to divide. And when you divide a fraction, you have to multiply by the reciprocal. So this formula actually allows that to happen because it's 1 over that trig function. And so then it's going to flip when you actually divide. So here are some problems that you cannot use the unit circle. So notice how these are in decimals, right? I didn't give it to you as like, a fraction with a pi. So unfortunately, you can't use the unit circle here. I also like to mention that, actually, before I get into here. So cosecant's 1 over sine, secant's 1 over cosine, because that's the reciprocal for secant, and then cotangent's reciprocal of tangent, so 1 over tangent. Now, back to this. Notice how the inside here, it's supposed to represent the angle, right? So this here is your angle. And notice how the angle doesn't have like a degree sign here. So this is not in degrees. If it's not in degrees, that means it has to be in radians. So these values here are all in radians. Keep that in mind. So when you're doing this, you have to make sure that the calculator mode, so if you go to the calculator, make sure the mode is in radians. So it needs to be in radians, or else you're going to get some invalid answers. So to work out this problem, I would just type in sine 0.6109 into the calculator and work that out. So if you plug this in, you get, I'm just going to round to 3 decimal places here. So 0.574. And then if you were to type in cosine negative 1.15119 into the calculator, you get 0.407. If you don't have a calculator at home, just use, you can use your phones. I believe your phone has a sine feature and a cosine feature. If you look in the calculator, or you can just use the internet. Just type in sine parentheses 0.6109, and it'll actually Google will calculate it for you. There's a lot of places where you can find a graphing calculator features, at least to calculate, cosine and sine and tangent, those kinds of things. Now, if you were to type in tangent 4.0203, you're going to get 1.206. And that's it. So these numbers here, I got them from just typing into the calculator. I just wanted to practice that with you guys today. And also get you guys used to seeing them not in radians, so those pi, and seeing them in decimals. And when you notice that they're in decimals, that's when you want to use the calculator. All right, let's try out some more, but maybe using these formulas here. All right, so here I have cosecant. The thing about cosecant is it's the reciprocal of sine, we said a moment ago. So using the formula, this is going to be 1 over sine the angle, and the angle is negative 9.4946. So when I type this into the calculator, I'm going to do 1 divided by sine of negative 9.4946. And when you type this in the calculator, you get, let's round to, again, 3 decimal places, 14, let me write that again, 14 334. And so that's what I got when I typed it in. For secant, it is related to cosine, the reciprocal of cosine. So this would be 1 over cosine, which is 2.8440. So 1 divided by cosine 2.8440 in the calculator gets you negative 1.046. And last but not least, we have cotangent, and cotangent's related to tangent. So using that formula from before, 1 over tangent 3.8426 is going to give you, let's see here, I'm typing this in. So 1 divided by tangent 3.8426 is 1.184. And that's my answer. All right, guys, so kind of to wrap up things for today. So we basically learned how to use the calculator to find the trig functions for sine, cosine, tangent. And so the calculator does not have buttons for cosecant, secant, and cotangent. So what you have to do is utilize sine and cosine and tangent, but you have to understand when you're doing a reciprocal, you're actually doing 1 divided by that trig function that it's reciprocal to. So you can do cosine, secant, and cotangent using these formulas that we've learned today. And so that way you can type it into the calculator. All right, that's it for today.